Katie, welcome to the Wealthy Boss Show.
Hey girl, how are you? Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. I have been looking forward to this interview ever since we scheduled it, been brainstorming about the things we're going to chat about, and it's here, it's happening. So good to have you on here. First of all, I've got so many things that I want to dive into, and I want to ask you about, your business, and we've got so many great speaking points tonight. But I first want to just bring up, you live in Tampa, Florida.
I do.
And depending on if you're watching this live, listening to this anytime in the near future, or maybe if you're listening to this a year from now, you might have forgotten, but we had certain thing happen recently in Florida, a little thing called Hurricane Irma. Katie, how has that experience been for you and your business? And did it totally throw you off your game? How was that whole experience encountering this thing that you totally had no anticipation of, and I'm sure probably disrupted your life quite a bit?
Yeah, I've lived here in Florida for 15 years now, since 2002, and I've been through many hurricanes, kind of coming close, sort of going over there, kind of going over here. Every season there's hurricanes, but this one was different, and this was the first one that I kind of totally lost it. I was crazy with anxiety, which is not like me normally.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very much like, hey, let's control what we can control and let's not worry about what we can't control. But this one really worried me for a couple of reasons. This is the first hurricane I've been through where I've been a mother, and I've had other responsibilities, and I have a husband, and I have a house, and there are other things that I am responsible for and sort of have roots with. We also live just a few blocks away from the water and are 5 feet above sea level here. So there were some very real, OMG, this could kind of be a serious thing. So we're fine now. We were really, really lucky that the hurricane really took a big turn, lost a lot of power before it got to us. But we have a couple friends who weren't necessarily so lucky. They're okay, but their house is completely flooded and ruined. But overall, me and my fellow folks in Tampa, we're all like, whew, all right, got a couple trees down, it has taken some time to get some power, but we're okay. So yeah, and yes, it did derail me for a few weeks, not only in the probably week before it was happening, but really in the week and a half now that it's been, it has taken a long time to really come back onto the scene of things. And I still don't feel actually that I'm moving at the pace and have the momentum that I had, 2.5, 3 weeks ago.
Right. And that's unfortunately, life happens. And I feel like sometimes as entrepreneurs, we get so scripted in what our game plan is, and we're great at planning goals. And when those disruptions come, it can really kind of throw us off our game. But it's definitely a good life skill to learn how to be flexible. And as you said, you can only control what you can control. So that's always
so true. And it's a really good life lesson of what's important and what's not.
Exactly.
The first thing that comes to my mind is the fear that we have in business. I'm not good enough. This won't go big. No one wants this thing. And how do I know if people are going to buy from me? Those types of what I am now calling very surface fears. They're very real, but that is a very different fear than my house and my entire livelihood could be taken away by nature kind of a thing. So it was so nice to have that complete refresh of priorities,
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we can definitely get a little bit bogged down in our day-to-day about what's actually important. So it's a good topic you bring up. So now that we know that you're safe, you're here. I even asked you if you wanted to reschedule the interview, and you're hitting it hard at fast and furious now. So here we are. Tell our Wealthy Boss audience kind of the bird's eye view of Biz Women Rock and what you do in your business.
Yeah. So from a top level, the Biz Women Rock brand and myself as its leader really is a provider of all things that are practical tools, education, community support, and any sort of strategy that any woman entrepreneur would need during this entrepreneurial journey, because it's a lifelong journey for those of us who know it's right on par with that health journey. It literally is the exact same thing, right? So my job as the leader of this brand and this community is to provide those resources that these women entrepreneurs need and what my community needs. So for me, that looks like I do one-on-one coaching and strategy for women who really want that customized hand-holding to get from here to here in their business. I provide resources like masterminds, like really in-depth, serious masterminds that help women in a group setting really leverage that mastermind component of each other and that accountability and the resources that happen there. I also do a lot of online education programs that dig into either very topical type stuff, whether it's like Facebook groups and how to, start, grow and monetize a Facebook group, or whether it's sort of like around a time, like I have a New Year Jumpstart program that happens at the beginning of the year every year that really helps women kind of like get their year started and actually do stuff with those big goals that they have. And then I have a retreat, my big foundational live event that happens every year at the end of every year that helps women actually take time out for themselves to then look at what they want in the coming year and really go through a really awesome experiential weekend so that they can create that. So that's kind of what the business model is. The podcast fits in there because I started the podcast because I had been working side by side as a co-owner with my husband in a local entrepreneurs association for so many years and just had this idea of like, well, I love entrepreneurship and I love really supporting women and highlighting women. And let me just see if I could do that as a podcast. And that sparked this entire business for me.
Awesome. So who knew, right? Sometimes you just do that next thing ahead of you. I'm definitely guilty of wanting to plan out like, okay, what does this entire next journey look like? And I have to know every single step. But that's such a great testament that you just, you follow the next thing that's there and that's going to unlock the next door, which will unlock the next door. And that way will be revealed. It's something that I'm getting better at, but it's definitely not something that comes easily to me. So that's great. One of the things that I think I resonate most with about you, Katie, and for those listening, Katie and I recently met at the Podcast Movement conference, so I got to hear a little bit of her backstory, some bits and pieces of it. But is hearing a little bit about the struggle to create this dream of being an entrepreneur and building that out. I feel like we do such a disservice in the fancy subject lines and the fancy lead magnet titles and landing pages that we kind of paint the picture that entrepreneurial success happens really quickly or should happen really quickly. And if it doesn't, that we're missing the boat on something. I resonate with people who have to work for what they have. And I know that that's something that you've encountered. Tell me a little bit about what that experience was, knowing that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, having to wait and see that unfold over time and put in the work and put in the hustle. And how did you keep your mojo going throughout that time? And I know that there's probably a lot of things, but what are some of the key things that really helped you keep your mojo as you were creating that vision that you had in your head?
I love this question, and it is a giant question.
It is.
But I love it because I am a perfectionist, and just like you, love to have this giant plan that you follow perfectly. That is me. Like at the core of who I am, that is me, the planner. I'm coming up with this idea, and I'm going to go plan for it.
Right.
So, and I'll give you this example. When I was in college, I decided that I wanted to learn how to play guitar. So my brother, who was a guitar player, got me, an electric guitar and a little amp. And for 6 months, I practiced. And I actually got really good, decently good. I could read tabs. I could do all that sort of stuff. I could play a couple Metallica songs, which is what I was into at the time.
The important stuff.
Right. And I could play Sheryl Crow, which I could actually sing to. And then I just gave up because I was like, I don't want to do the practice. I want to be great. I don't want to go through the journey. I just want to be great. I just want to click my fingers and be great and be successful. Yes. And that is such a great analogy for who I started out being. And I think a lot of us start out being in business. And so to answer your question, it's been painful. Like I didn't know I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I sort of fell backwards into entrepreneurship because I was up to my ears in frustration with the job world. And I just was like, I don't want to do this. I wanted to be a writer. I had always wanted to be a writer. And I wrote
I didn't know that. I've actually, I have a writing background as well. Oh, that's awesome.
So I wrote a book at some point about how to find your true love, because that was something that I was going through at the moment.
Yeah.
And I was on it. It was a brilliant book. It was, looking back, it was horribly written, but like it's a brilliant book about this concept of like, it's exactly how I do things now. It's a very practical guide to attracting true love in your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the greatest thing happened. Literally, this book ended up being a giant workbook for me attracting my husband into my life. So at the end of that book, I had met my husband. Never ended up writing that part into the book, which was a major flaw of the book.
I'm surprised you did it.
Right.
Maybe you need
go
a
back
second
to
edition.
Yeah. And beyond that, right? So
it's gonna be a bestseller. You're like, hey, it works for me.
Of course. So I met my husband, and he, or my then boyfriend, and we had this beautiful courtship. And he had just started. He's an entrepreneur ever since he was like in diapers, I swear. So constantly, but like by the time I met him, we were, I think, 29, 30. So literally 30 years of business lessons already. So he had started and stopped multiple businesses. And so he had started this business. He had just started this business called Tampa Bay Business Owners, much like a chamber, but just for entrepreneurs. And so being the brand new girlfriend, I was like, well, I'll help you out. Sure. I work in marketing and corporate. You don't have a sales packet? I could totally help you with a sales packet. Okay. You don't have a process for how to do this? Like, let me help you out with that process. And I did that while thinking that it would just be kind of the backdrop, while I was like, I'm going to now make $1 million selling this book, this ebook that I self-published, because that's what I was looking at that time. So the point is that the combination of those two things did not last very long. I ended up quitting my job because I was like, I'm miserable here. I don't want to do it. And I'm just going to take a leap of faith that I can get this book to sell, and I'll help Chris out on the side at the time, for as long as I need to, for a few extra bucks when I need it.
Right.
Well, I very quickly realized, like, I'm not going to make up the bills I need to pay through this book right now. So let me just go work with him. And if we put both of our energies into building this business, then we can do it.
Right.
That's really what started this whole like being an entrepreneur thing, because then not only was I in that role of, now I was an owner, I got ownership in that company quite quickly. But I was also surrounded. We serviced entrepreneurs. So I was hearing stories and stories and stories and talking to people over and over again who had been in business a long time, who had just started a business, and everything in between. So, so the very as short of an answer as I can give you is that there were just so many hiccups in there that I started that entrepreneurial path thinking, okay, it's only going to take us X amount of months to get to this, and then it'll all be perfect.
Yes.
Okay, then it'll just take X amount of months until we get to this, and then we'll have made it.
Yeah.
And so it just was a long, painful journey of realizing that there is no end game. There is no end. We made it. And it literally is a stumbling onto what's the next best thing that we could do. Yep. Fast forward, how I've really approached that with Biz Women Rock is getting into this space of like, it's a giant experiment. And if I just can look at it through that, I will eventually get really good at being the experimenter and figuring out what concoctions really work and what blows up in my face, And
that takes so much pressure off, because I feel, we have our blinders on often, and we have this great idea that we think is perfect. And everything rides on that, right? So we put all this pressure. It's like, it's this or nothing, or I'm going to be, serving hamburgers at McDonald's for the rest of my life. So I love that I just lost my earphone. I love that you have started approaching it that way and are open to some things are going to work, some things aren't, but no matter what, I'm moving forward.
I mean, because there's no other option. And here's, I think, what the ultimate thing is. There's no other option. Like, you've got to keep your doors open. So if something doesn't work and you keep digging deeper into it, you keep trying it from all these different angles, like at some point you need to say, like, is this working or is this not? Or is this going to, but this thing that I thought was going to be it, perhaps just that's one of the things that you now have versus that, right?
Exactly.
So you keep on learning and just keep, like, every iteration. We were talking before we went live about all the iterations that we have in business. And I actually think that every single iteration helps you get to being better in that next phase.
Right.
Like, you can't just show up and be the perfect version of your business. You just can't. That doesn't exist. So you have to go through all those iterations. And the folks who, identifying in the online business space, really in any business space, the folks who show up and it seems like everything's perfect, that it's not. So let's yes right now. But B, they have more than likely done a gazillion iterations of their businesses. And some of the folks who I love and I follow and I will buy anything that they put out, or I just love their message. I love who they are. So I'm in their community, I'm in their space. They literally, some of those folks are very well-known people, but this is like the 800th version of what they've done, and version number 2 had nothing to do with this topic even, you know what I mean? So, I think it's just, it completely deflates that pressure, and it completely deflates this need to do it perfectly and to line yourself up with those who seem to do it perfectly. You know?
Right. Speaking of the company that we keep, that's actually a great segue into what I wanted to talk about next, which is making sure that you have the proper support system in place as an entrepreneur. I love connecting my wealthy bosses with resources that are going to give them the tools that they need to sustain the pace of an entrepreneur, to get, as long as it takes to build, that vision, even though we never truly get there, right? But what can we do? What can we surround ourselves with? How can we take care of ourselves? How can we set ourselves up with the tools that we need so that we can sustain the pace to keep trying those 101 versions of our business? And I think a big piece of that is whether or not we have the right support system in place. So I would love to ask you, there's kind of a couple pieces to this question. But first, I know you shared a little bit about your experience when you had this entrepreneurial vision and you branched off into the entrepreneurial world, that you kind of encountered some resistance from your support community at the time. And I know you ultimately had to upgrade the company you kept in order to support you. So part A, I would love for you to talk a little bit about that experience. And then 2, how has that then impacted the way that you provide support and community for Biz Women Rock? Because you do an amazing, amazing job from what I've witnessed already.
Thank you. So the brief story there is, the foundational concept is really find role models who are doing what you want to do, and go start seeing what they do, what they're doing, all that sort of stuff, so that you get a grander idea, bigger than what you already know, of what's possible. I did not do that very well in the beginning. And I think all entrepreneurs go through some sort of version of this, whether it's mild or really harsh. But I had a very core group of girlfriends during my late 20s, into my early 30s, and 30-ish is about when I jumped into the entrepreneur boat. And it was all brand new, and it was really uncomfortable, and it was terrifying. And so I would consistently go back to my group of girls and be like, I only have 2 months worth of like cash to pay my mortgage in my account. I'm terrified.
Right.
Or I would say like, I don't have health insurance. Like, back then, like, you didn't have to have health insurance. And so I would just go to like clinics and things like that. Like, that's not something that I want to put on my budget right now. So like, money's going to everything else that's important.
Take a vitamin, say your prayers.
Yeah, exactly. Like that. So there were all these ways that I was living that were the complete opposite from what had been the norm, which was still the norm for my girlfriends, which were corporate, very like, go to school, you get a job, work up the damn ladder, and then like you've got all the benefits. What retirement plans are you going into? Katie, how in the world could you cash out your 401k, which I did? Like, how could you do? That's unthinkable, right? So
that's correct, right.
So basically what I was doing is all these things that seem so natural to me now because I'm in this bubble called entrepreneurship. To people who are not entrepreneurs, it is unthinkable. And it is like, what? So here I was in this new phase of entrepreneurship, kind of going to my girlfriends who were a really emotionally strong support for me. So I was going with all the doubts. And because it was so new and confusing for me, that's what I was sharing with them. And they were lovingly concerned, but concerned from the vantage point of the corporate expectations or those traditional expectations. And to make a very long story short, the relationship with all of those ladies ended up dissolving in a pretty quick amount of time. And it was incredibly painful. And I actually would not use the word upgrading my surroundings because that feels so harsh comparatively to like, because I have been downgraded, or people have upgraded out of my life and chosen to not be around me. And so I don't like that feeling. I just like to feel like, you know, I have just continued to learn that it is 100% in your control who you get to surround yourself with. So decide what you want your conversations to sound like. Decide who you want in your life, and then go proactively go find some more of those people. Like and it could be in no matter where you are in this journey. I realized, I don't know, a couple months ago that I was like, I really need to go I need to sit down and have drinks with other like amazing, like really hard driving business women. Like I need to do that. And so I literally had to take the proactive approach, and I'm super social, but like not when like it, my business is like, I'm in my office, I'm going picking up kid. I mean, we all get in our routines of like this normalcy, right? So I was like, I've got to make time for that. That's really important to me. I'm really lucky to have amazing girlfriends that are all in different states or different countries. Yes. But so anyway, I literally just started talking to a girlfriend of mine, and I was like, out for drinks on a regular basis. And so like every month we'll go out for drinks, and I love it because it's generally during like a happy hour when like everyone's off of work, and she and I are like geeking out on business stuff. And how are you driving revenue, and what marketing thing are you doing right now? And what's the retreat going to be like? Right. So, so it fulfills me in that way. And so, rather than doing that whole thing like, oh, you are the equivalent of the top 5 people that you surround yourselves by. That's true. I really do believe that. But it doesn't have to be a harsh cut and like, oh, I need to get away from these sorts of people, but just be discerning on what conversations you choose to have and who you can have those with.
Right. And have you seen, because community is such a pillar of what you offer in your business, do you have a couple of maybe examples or kind of case studies in which just having that supportive community of fellow women entrepreneurs, in your case with your business model, has helped keep someone in the game to achieve their goals when they were maybe on the fence about whether or not this whole entrepreneurial journey was for them?
Oh my God, I have a gazillion of them, which is awesome. The most immediate that comes to my mind, there's 2. So I have the Biz Women Rock Academy, which is, it's the place for the high achieving entrepreneur who wants continual education and wants that really core group of community, right? So one of the women in there, this was a while ago, had posted a video in there about how she was really struggling because there was something that happened in her business. She communicated it to her husband, and her husband had very harsh opinions about it, which threw her into a loop. And this is why this community stuff is so important, and to surround yourself by other people who get it. Because this business, none of our lives live in a box. Like they all intertwine with each other. So when our relationship is off, everything else is off. When we just had a fight with our kids, everything is off. Like it just doesn't, it all touches each other. So it was so great because that was the space, the sacred space where she could come and say that. Like who else do you get to say that to who would get it, right? Yeah. And then we had, so within my mastermind, one of my masterminds right now, another really, really, seriously in-depth conversations happen there on how it's related to business and how life happens and all this other business stuff has to happen. But just really like, the members in there are starting, like not starting to, but like just the other day, one of them had shared this massive win about a client, like, it was like the first client that she had choose her top end, seriously high end program. And that's a giant win because we had talked about it there. Absolutely. Where else can you go and brag about that? Yes.
Right.
And when you get to brag about that, that's good. You get the juju of like, yeah, everyone's cheering you on, and you've got that culture built in. So, it just, especially in the low moments, because there are many of them, and especially in those high moments when you want to be like, I want to sing from the mountains about how awesome this is, having the people who get it, who are in that journey with you, no matter where they are on that journey, like that is so vital. And you can't do this without that.
Right. I love that. And it's such an important service that you offer that actually really formalizes that type of community, not only within your paid programs, but also your private community, such a thriving private Facebook group, which is a tremendous place for people to kind of dip their toe in that community, which is awesome. Moving on to a slightly different topic now, since this is, of course, a topic that's near and dear to my heart, being a personal trainer and yoga instructor and bar instructor and all that. I know that you mentioned in your Biz Women Rock podcast, in one of the episodes, that you'd had your own body transformation. Talk to me a little bit about that and what that has meant for your energy levels, your productivity, and your confidence, those things that you actually might be able to bring back with you in your business.
Ooh, I love this topic. So I have been an athlete my whole life, and it's something that's super important to me. This relationship with health and fitness has always been a common theme in my life. In my late 20s, I had a very unhealthy relationship with food and exercise that really downward spiraled into an eating disorder. I wouldn't identify myself that way anymore, but during that time period, it was very real. And so all that to say is throughout, I'm 38 right now, throughout this decade of being 30, in my 30s has really been this super tuned in and plugged in version of who's the best healthy version of myself. So what that's looked like is it's constantly evolving, but what that's looked like is over the course of all this time, choosing not to eat meat, choosing to be mostly dairy-free for the most part. I call myself vegan-ish. Eat a little bit of fish, although I'm even getting away from that a little bit more lately. So that's been a big thing. And so learning nutrition and learning over all these years, like learning what food does for fuel in my body and how I can show up better. When I was pregnant, that was also it got me even more zoned into that, because it was like, okay, now like everyone and their mother told me that I should not be vegan. Like I need to eat meat now that I'm pregnant. And so that was like a big learning curve. I was like, I got to learn this so that I can, because I know it's possible to be vegan and be healthy and pregnant. Right. So what does that mean for me? So that was another dig in point. And so all of that stuff, as far as like nutrition goes, I'm super educated about. Right. And I had just done a Facebook Live earlier today, actually, about like, what we're doing and, what quick and healthy lunch that I might have in order to make sure I'm staying fueled for the day, and why it's important to take out that time. Yes. I don't want to do that's not my natural state to want to stop work, but to take out the time to stop and eat something healthy, and how that's going to make the latter part of my day even better, right? Yes. So and then as far as exercise goes, body transformation. So through the ups and downs of whatever relationship with food I have had over all these years, I was super athletic in high school. Into college, I gained the college 60, not the college, freshman 15. I gained the college 60. So at some point I was, I'm sure I was like 220-ish pounds at some point. And so that, over this course of learning health and nutrition, that I've really gotten that in check in a way that feels really good and really natural for me. So showing up for fitness is very much like knowing how to incorporate it into my life, knowing when it needs to get scheduled, knowing if I've sort of fallen off the wagon for a few too many days, and knowing as it relates to my productivity and my ability to show up in my business very well and in a healthy way, knowing that it has to happen. Like, for example, if I'm having moments where I'm just not feeling focused and I'm not feeling into it, like I already know, and I've grained it in my head, I need to go on a walk, or I need to go on a run, or I need to go jump up and down somewhere. Like I need to move, because the physiology changes my psychology. So I'm super tuned into that stuff. And there are definitely times, Hurricane Irma, for example, that I had no desire to go work out. I had no desire to go on a walk even. Like I didn't even want to move. I just was like, But that's a time, that's like a time warp little moment. And I know what those boundaries are. So I know what that spectrum is, and when I'm getting a little too close to either end of that spectrum. So as a whole, just that, the fitness, the nutrition, all of that stuff, constantly aware of it, constantly know, and am able to draw, like, why am I not focused? Why am I not productive right now? And does that have a connection to my body and my nutrition right now?
Absolutely. I love two things about what you just said. I love that you connected your outcomes, your business outcomes, with how you're taking care of your body, because I meet so many entrepreneurs who, I'll hear they'll tell me the stories within our Facebook group that, the first 2 years they were so focused on their business that they gained X amount of pounds and they totally let their exercise habits slip because their business was so important to them and they had all these things they wanted to accomplish and achieve, not recognizing how closely the way we take care of our this machine that's running the whole show, right, actually impacts the quality of our work. So I love that you get that, because I feel like that's a harder lesson for some entrepreneurs to learn. So I love that you see that immediate connection. And secondly, I love that you see there are two extremes, both of which are unhealthy, because often thinking in extremes is what prevents people from trying to find that healthy spot in the first place.
Yeah.
I like to dub it the fitness sweet spot, where you're getting the best outcomes for the minimum amount of sacrifice. And it's, there's no perfect set point for all people, but for most of us, it's within that range, right, of an extreme over here and an extreme over there, where we're getting the best benefits that are important and impacting and providing benefits back to those other things that are also important in our lives without taking away from them. So yeah. I absolutely love that. I think that's a fantastic way to close out our conversation. But before you go, talk to me a little bit more. I know you are currently accepting new members into your Biz Women Rock Academy. If any Wealthy Boss listeners are interested in what that might look like, can you tell them a little bit more about what they can expect and how they can learn more?
Yeah, so the Biz Women Rock Academy holds a special place in my heart because it really brings together the most active members of the Biz Women Rock community in general, and those women who know that they want more in their business. And they know that this thing called business, called, this company that they've created, is really a vehicle for them to live a life of freedom, to live a life of impact, and to live a life that they really love. Like, they can actually design it the way that they want to. So this academy is where those conversations happen amongst those ladies. So generally speaking, there is education or some sort of an event that I am bringing to those ladies every single week. Whether it's a master class of somebody who's an expert in this field and they're bringing their expertise in a really intimate manner to those ladies, or if it's a case study, we learn a lot from each other. There's so much wisdom that happens amongst one another. And so I am very lucky. I am very intimate with my community members. And so I'll know that so-and-so over here has been like doing this great email program, and she's got really awesome stuff that's happening with this email or with these Facebook ads, or, she's been doing this really cool strategy on Instagram, and I want everyone else to know that. And so I bring them in to share that little snapshot of what they're doing so that we can all learn together. We do virtual networking. So there's, because it's so much more than just business education. So we do virtual networking to make sure that those relationships are really deepening. And then there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that I do. So a lot of my inner thoughts of interesting things that are happening, new wave things that are happening, innovative things that are happening, a lot of my back office processes and how I do stuff, and all that sort of stuff. So it's really sort of the culmination of where you kind of get the best of what I have to bring to the table, the relationships that I have. I'm curating all that stuff for you, and that safe space to let it be really powerful to connect with all these other serious, big time, we're not complacent. We're going to make stuff happen. I don't know how, but we're going to do it, and we're going to figure it out together. So that's what the Academy is all about. Anyone who is interested can learn more at bizwomenrockacademy.com, but it's just such a special place to be.
Awesome. And I'll be sure to link to that in the show notes as well. Katie, it has been an absolute pleasure. I sure appreciate you taking time out of your busy hurricane scattered life to hang out with the Wealthy Bosses. Thank you so much. And we'll talk to you again soon, I hope.
Thank you so much, girl. Appreciate it.
Take care.